Just before the video starts, just a trigger warning. There's a lot of topics that will talk about in this video, such as sexual assault, rape, genocide, murder, slavery, basically anything that the Bible has. So just watch out if it's not, if you feel like uncomfortable to talk about these topics, just tune out. I'll get that noise and just have a listen. Hello, my name is Faith. And this is a short story of why I'm not a Christian or why I'm atheist right now. Basically, as a young kid, I was brought up in a Christian home and we were under the Protestant denomination. And I was raised from an early age to think that I'm special, like there's a God that made this universe that loves me, that has a purpose for me, and therefore he put me on this earth. And it's not just that, the nice side of it. The bad side of it would be I am a sinner. I am born dirty. I deserve to be punished at the end of my life with eternal hellfire if I don't believe in this God. Yeah, and I always had self-confidence issues, so I never for once believed that I deserve to go to a place like heaven because, like, I sin all the time, Like, it's impossible not to sin. And every time Christianity made me feel guilty for, liking and doing normal human things. Like maybe, wanting a relationship or whatever. That's natural because, of hormones during puberty. But, under Christianity, no, it's always abstinence, it's always, keep yourself pure and everything. So I never believed that I would end up in heaven eventually. And I was would be insecure and keep asking for forgiveness, on a constant basis, just in case one day if I happen to die, I would end up in heaven, hopefully, with the grace of God, right? So yeah, for say 19 plus years, I've always been in Sunday school and everything, and I've never really been that devout in a way that I read the Bible and pray every day, but it's something my family does, and it's something that was pushed onto me. Like, we would sing in the car every morning to school, like worship, and we would do some prayers, and sometimes we would have some family meetings where we sit down and do devotion and, see visions, which I had to pick some of them because I was scared that if I did not have any, then I'm probably not having the spirit in me, which is something messed up. Anyway, back on the topic. Yeah, I never really was too intrigued by Christianity. Like, I didn't really care about the Bible and everything. I thought it was boring, honestly. It didn't draw me. Because a lot of people would say, oh, you need to read the Bible. It's the inspired word of God, It's going to change your life. But I never found it, that enlightening. And I read portions of it, I kind of read few pieces here and there, Genesis and some other chapters, but never the thing in its whole entirety. And it's also the Bible stories that were told to me were told in a perspective of God is love and everything, because that's what the Bible says, right? God is love, God is patience, whatever. So every story I heard was already from a biased perspective. As an atheist, I've recently, when I was 19, I started rereading Bible, and rereading the stories I already know as well, such as the Noah's Ark story. Number one, because the thing is that we use the Bible to prove God, but as atheist now, I understand that the Bible is not proof of God. It's a claim. It's not the evidence. Because, how are we going to prove events like a global flood or a man surviving being inside a fish for 3 days, a woman turning to salt, and talking snake, talking donkeys. Like it's really hard to imagine that in reality because it does not exist. So rereading Noah's Ark made me first question: did this story even happen? Like, how possible is it for a 600-year-old man, which is already quite not scientific, because like humans barely live up to 200 years old, and this 600-year-old man and his family were able to build a ark out of wood and mud, whatever, to contain all the animals that we know that exist today. Like, if they were not on the ark, they'll probably went extinct. So like, yeah, and then not just that logistic of how this ark was built, how it survived the waters, the flood, and it's like, how did you keep the peace between animals like prey and predator, and how do you feed those animals for a whole entire year? Like, feed, food, water, where did the poop go? Like, there's just too many questions to like. So previously, like, I would just take the story as face value and just like believe in it. Oh, that, yeah, there was arc, yeah, it did happen, But now as an adult, you're like, wait, how did this happen? Like, let me see how this could actually occur. But so yeah, and that story is not just a story about, did it happen? It's also about a story about God's character, right? Like, this God is so merciful, he decided to wipe out his whole creation and just save one family and some animals. But the thing is that the thing about God is very tricky because he has a lot of characteristics. He has omniscience. He's everywhere. He's omniscient. He's all-knowing. He's omnipresent. He's everywhere. He's omnipotent. He's all-powerful, and he's benevolent. So he's all-loving. So in this case, the Bible clearly states that he regrets flooding people, and that's why he put the rainbow up at the end. So like, regret is a very human emotion. It's a emotion that happens when you wish something could have happened differently. So like, oh, I regret not studying more, or something like, you do not know the outcome and you wish that the outcome could be different based on your action. So the thing is that if God is all-knowing, he would already know that the flood would not solve the problem of evil, because that's the reason why he did that in the first place. So like, why did he do it? Like, if nothing is going to change, if sin is still going to exist, why did he flood everyone? And why did he even kill the animals? Like, what did they do? So like, yeah, this story is not a story of God's love, but saving a family, and some animals. It's basically God saying, let me start over, wipe out everyone and start over, which is so not one of his traits. Like, especially those two that conflict a lot is the all-knowing and all-loving, yeah, and all-powerful. It just doesn't click with me. So yeah, that story, it now sucks to me. It shows me how bad this God is, and that I don't want to worship a God like this. Another story, I think the major stories I remember was this Job. Like, when I was a Christian, they told me that, this man, he suffered this. Okay, the moral of the story you should get out of this is that no matter how many bad things happen to you, remember, Job had it worse, and he did not complain. So you should be like Job, and not complain when bad things happen to you. So like, that was what we were told to get out of the story. But as an adult looking back, it's a story about this all-loving God making a bet with the devil over a man's life, making this man so miserable to the point that he loses his whole family, he shaves his head bald, and his wife like looks down at him. It's just, why would you do that? Like I thought God doesn't test, like doesn't make bets or test people. Like, he doesn't remember the story about God being tempted by the devil. he chooses to ignore the devil and everything. But in this story, he's directly communicating with the devil and like making the devil like a hitman. Like, oh, I allow you to make this man's life miserable. That's the first stage, by the way. Like, and then since nothing happens, like Job is still loyal and everything, God allows him to then hurt him directly, which is what the hell. Like, this story shows you that an all-loving God just doesn't exist. Like, why would if I love someone, I wouldn't do that to them, you know what I mean? I wouldn't make their life miserable. I wouldn't take away their kids. And the thing is that Christians think it's a really good story because, like, oh, at the end, he's rewarded, you know, like, he gets twice of everything back. Like, oh, he got new children, he got new, slaves and livestock. No, that's not the point of the story. Like, if you ask any parent today, like, if you could replace their kid, like, could you replace a kid? They'll probably say no. Like, their kid is a special kid, you know, like, special individual. You can't replace kids. So, like, this story is pointless. Like, even if you give him back the kids, he's not gonna get his original kids. Yeah, and this is one of the major red flags of Christianity, like the stories that I've read that made me deconvert. So, another story I want to talk about is the Abraham and Isaac story. The story about, this man who has been longing for a child for a very long time, finally gets a child, but he loves this child too much that God feels like, oh, he's getting too much of your attention. Let's see whether you still love me enough to, like, sacrifice him. So it's like, this God gives this man a child, which he has been longing for a long time, and he's not able to because he's really old. Like, he gives him his child and tells him to bring his child to the top of the mountain without, like, I know Christians will say that now. He didn't actually directly say sacrifice his son. I think he did. Like, he did say in the verses, but the fact that, he had to tie his son and put him on the altar says everything. Like, God was playing with him. Like, he wanted him to go all that way until, like, he almost, like, stabbed his son. It's just crazy because the thing is that God blessed this man who was willing to kill his son. I mean, I get it because God himself killed his own son, but yeah, like, a man that's so blind in obedience and just will do anything that God says without thinking about it. Like, if you ask any parent today, if they're a good parent, they would say no. Like, even if God says kill your child, you wouldn't do that because you have morals, right? And the fact that there's one of the 10 commandments is to obey parents. Like, if I was Isaac, I would never talk to my dad again. Imagine that trip down from the mountain, like, Dad, what were you thinking? Like, you tied me up. Like, obviously you were gonna kill me. What was happening? And yeah, Christians always love to use a story about saying, like, oh, we should go all the way for God. Like, if God tells us to kill our children, we should kill our children because he's God and we shouldn't question him. And this story is more common, and I feel like, yeah, even though it's more common, like, they still got a good message out of it. Like, Christians love to interpret things in a different way to make God look good. Anyway, I think this is a bad story. But anyway, there's another story that goes hidden, and I read that when I started deconstructing. Like, I read the story of Jephthah, a story about a man who made a bet again with God to win the war, and says that he will sacrifice anything that turns up at his door when he comes home. And that happened to be his daughter. She had no part in this bet. She just happened to show up at the door, and now she has to give up her life and die because of her dad. Seems fair. Seems very just. And the thing is that the difference between this story and the last one, the Isaac story, is that God actually follows through with the bet, like the sacrifice. He does not say, oh, let's have an alternate, like, let me provide you a ram or something. He just goes with it. He's like, yeah, you promised me a daughter? Yeah, give me a daughter. Okay, so, yeah, that story is a terrible story, because, like, it shows how unloving this God is. Like, he knew this girl did not want to die. Like, she cried for months and months. And those things that she cried about is being a virgin. Like, she didn't get a chance to get married and everything. So then, like, that's why she was crying. Anyway, yeah, like, a lot of people will talk about the Isaac story, because they was like, God doesn't actually want him to kill his child. He just wants to test him, you know? But in this situation, God actually did go through with the killing, you know? So, yeah, this story doesn't get talked about enough, yeah? And another story, I mean, the Bible, they always tell kids to read the Bible, but the Bible is not a PG rated book. It's not like a children's book, because, like, there's mass murders, there is incest, there is rape, there is, like, slavery. Like, there's so many topics that children shouldn't be reading. And I remember hearing the name Lot. I remember it was like, oh, that story we heard about him is like, oh, let's look at the land. Which land do you want? Blah, blah, blah. But I never got to hear the story about where he, God tries to wipe out Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham has to find out, righteous people in the town to save the town from getting, like, wiped out by God. And God actually thinks that Lot is righteous enough to be saved, that he allows angels to, blind people to let set him free. Yep. So, like, basically the story is that Lot, some people banged. Okay, basically the angels came down to visit Lot to warn him about, like, God's wrath and everything. And then the town men were knocking at the door because they wanted to rape those angels. They're like, oh, I want to have sex with that man. And then Lot being the genius in him that he is, and being the righteous man that deserves to be saved, says, you know what, don't rape those men. I have 2 virgin daughters. You can do whatever you want with them, basically. And God thinks this is a righteous man that should be saved, because he did save this man. And his wife, who just happens to look back, the thing is that she didn't even know the consequence of looking back. They're not gonna be like, oh, if you look back, you're gonna turn to salt. And they never said that to her. So that's the first issue. And the thing is that it's natural for people to look back at things that are destroyed. Like, that was your home. Like, that was a place that you have a lot of emotional connection to. And to see it, like, destroyed, it is a hard thing, Like, so she just looks back and she gets turned to salt. Like, is that so, like, just? Like, and then this man who offered his 2 daughters lives on and has these 2 daughters commit sexual assault on him and rape him to have babies to continue the population. Isn't this an amazing story? Oh yeah, another story. Like, oh, this story is also under the radar. Not a lot of people talk about this. The story about I think it was, don't quote me. One of them, Elijah, probably Elijah, the bold prophet. Yeah, some boys, kids being kids, they say stupid stuff like, oh, you ugly and everything, like, go die. Kids do that all the time. Like, so that what happened is that this Elijah guy, the prophet, was in the town, and 2 kids, being kids, say dumb things like saying, oh, go away, baldy, or something. And Elijah curses these 2 kids in the name of God. And God sends down 2 bears to maul and kill 42 children for just 2 people. And even if he kills just the 2 children, it's bad enough. Like, 42 children died as a result of this. What the hell? Like, kids do, like, kids that exist today if they lived in those days, they would not survive at all, honestly. So that's another story. And another story. There's so many stories. Like, I could go on and on. Like, a story that's popping into my mind right now is the foreskin story. Because as a kid, they never really mentioned the foreskins, but it is very prevalent in David's story, you know? The whole reason why he gets to marry the king's daughter is because he managed to not get 100 foreskins, but 200. Way to go, David, honestly. And I always think about how did he individually tore off 200. He individually packed them, and somebody individually counted all 200. Like, oh my god. And also God himself has obsession with foreskins. Like, he nearly killed what his name? I think it was Noah? Not too sure, but he nearly killed Noah until his wife, like, cut her child's foreskin off. Like, why do you care so much? Like, the thing is that if God intelligently designed everyone in his image, like, you gave them the foreskin, why are you asking them to cut it off? Like, if they're perfect, you know what I mean? It's the same thing as, you know, why would God give you, like, beauty and ask you to hide it? Like, don't even give someone beauty if you're gonna, like, take it away and ask them not to. And that's the thing about homosexuality as well. Like, God made it pleasurable for people to like the same sex, and he tells them, because a lot of preachers will say that homosexuality is not a sin. It's like the thought of it is not a sin, but the engaging in it is a sin, which is weird. Because, like, isn't it sadistic for someone to give you some ability to do something but not, like, tell you not to do it? Like, that is cruel. Like, imagine you're only able to love, like, one gender, and, like, you can't because God told you so. And then you have to, like, fake it, you know? Anyway, no, that's a tangent again. Like, I don't know if like a Christian could just come out reading the Bible and just, like, be still Christian. Like, that's what I did. Like, unless they read it in a specific way, you know, like how I did before I, you know, truly was honest about every story. Like, it's really hard for you once you're, like, born into it, because like I think one of the good, like, some ways to, like, you know, remove some bias is to, like, maybe change, like, substitute names. Like, instead of Jesus or God doing actions, why don't you put someone else's name there? Like, for example, let's say Kevin is my boyfriend, right? Kevin loves me so much. Like, he wants the best for me and everything. But if I do not love Kevin back, Kevin is gonna beat me, he's gonna torture me, he's gonna, you know, do the worst imaginable thing to me if I don't love him back. But he does this because he really loves me, and, you know, I will be nothing without him. I need Kevin. Okay, Kevin is crazy, but when you say, oh, God loves you so much, that God wants you to be with him, but if you do not love God back, you're going to hell. He's going to torture you for eternity, but he loves you, and that's why he does that for you, you know, and you're nothing without God. The irony, you know. Anyway, maybe I should do this next time, you know, like, talk about more topics, more targeted stuff, because, like, I'm all over the place, because I'm really passionate about this thing. So, yeah, what I can say is that please question everything. Like, do not just believe things that you were told as a kid, especially. Like, actually think about it, because there's, like, a saying that's always, like, truth can withstand questioning for sure. So if it's true, it would withstand whatever questioning. If it's true, science would support it, you know. Don't be afraid to question, don't be afraid to doubt, because questioning things help us get to where we are today, you know. If we didn't test theories, we didn't, like, keep trying to improve our methods of, like things, we wouldn't be where we are today, honestly. So, like the thinking atheist, it says, assume nothing, question everything. And the thing is that I rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned. And like, I don't want faith. I want fact. If we have fact, we don't need faith. That's the point. So instead of stopping it when we don't know something and said God did it, let's stop and say, how did this happen? Let's find out. And that's how we are gonna advance as a species. That's my take. Thank you.